Two China Coast Guard clash into U.S. warships in explosive South China Sea clash. The U.S. deployed two warships Wednesday in a disputed South China Sea shoal where two Chinese ships collided earlier in the week while trying to drive away a smaller Philippine ship in a high seas accident that raised alarms about maritime safety. Both China and the Philippines claim Scarborough Shoal and other outcroppings in the South China Sea. Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei and Taiwan also lay overlapping claims in the contested waters. The USS Higgins, a guided missile destroyer, and USS Cincinnati, a littoral combat ship, were shadowed by a Chinese Navy ship while sailing about 30 nautical miles, 55 kilometers, from the Scarborough Shoal. There were no reports of any untoward incident, Philippine Coast Guard Commodore J. Tariella said, citing information from U.S. officials and a Philippine surveillance flight. The U.S. Navy has staged what it calls freedom of navigation voyages and overflights in the South China Sea for years to challenge China's restrictions and its demand for entry notifications in virtually the entire stretch of the disputed waters that it claims. That has angered China, and its forces have had close runs-in with U.S. warships and aircraft on such patrols in international waters and airspace. The deployment happened after Washington's ambassador to Manila, Mary Kay Carlson, on Tuesday condemned the latest reckless action by China directed against a Philippine vessel in Scarborough. The rich fishing atoll off the northwestern Philippines has been the scene of increasingly tense confrontations between the Chinese and Philippine Coast Guard, fishing and other ships in recent years. The Philippines is the oldest treaty ally of the U.S. in Asia. Washington has repeatedly warned that it's obligated to defend the Philippines if Filipino forces come under an armed attack, including in the South China Sea. On Monday, a Chinese Navy destroyer and a Chinese Coast Guard ship accidentally collided while trying to block and drive away a smaller Philippine Coast Guard ship, the BRP Sulwan, about 10.5 nautical miles, 19 kilometers, from Scarborough. Video footages made public by the Philippine Coast Guard show the Chinese Coast Guard ship blasting its powerful water cannon and a number of Chinese personnel standing at the bow shortly before that section was hit by the fast-turning Chinese Navy ship. Shortly after the collision, the video shows the heavily shattered bow of the Chinese Coast Guard ship without the Chinese personnel, who were standing on deck before the crash. The Chinese Navy ship sustained deep dents and what appeared to be linear gushes on its hull. Japan, Australia and New Zealand expressed alarm on Wednesday over the dangerous maneuvers that led to the collision in the busy waters, a key global trade route. Japan upholds the rule of law and opposes any actions which increase tensions. Our concern goes to the repeated actions in the South China Sea, Japanese ambassador to Manila Endo Kanzuya said in a post on X. The Australian embassy in Manila expressed concern by the dangerous and unprofessional conduct of Chinese vessels near Scarborough Shoal involving the Philippine Coast Guard, saying in a statement the incident highlights the need for de-escalation, restraint and respect for international law. This is a learning experience for the People's Republic of China, Tariella, the Philippine Coast Guard Commodore, told a news conference in Manila. For so many years, we have been reminding them to stop dangerous maneuvers, to stop risky blockings, to adhere to the anti-collision regulations because if there is a very high chance of miscalculation, this kind of collision incident would happen. Tariella spoke a few hours after a Chinese fighter jet flew as close as 500 feet, 150 meters, to try to drive away a Philippine Coast Guard plane on a surveillance flight on Wednesday over the Scarborough with invited journalists on board. The Chinese jet carried out dangerous maneuvers for about 20 minutes, including flying about 200 feet, 60 meters, above the small Philippine aircraft, Tariella said. The latest confrontation in the South China Sea has intensified fears that a miscalculation could spiral into a direct conflict involving not only China and the Philippines but also the United States and its regional allies. Analysts warn that the presence of two U.S. warships near the contested Scarborough Shoal sends a powerful signal of Washington's intent to uphold freedom of navigation, but also heightens the risks of a larger showdown. Defense experts in Manila noted that China's increasingly aggressive posture illustrated by the collision involving its Navy and Coast Guard demonstrates Beijing's willingness to escalate beyond gray zone tactics. China is no longer relying solely on intimidation or water cannons, said retired Rear Admiral Rommel Judong. The use of naval assets in direct collision scenarios marks a dangerous escalation. Meanwhile, Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. convened an emergency security meeting following the incidents. According to government insiders, Manila is considering filing another diplomatic protest against Beijing, while at the same time accelerating military cooperation with the United States, Japan, and Australia under recent defense agreements. The collision and subsequent U.S. deployment have drawn widespread concern across Asia and beyond. The European Union released a statement urging restraint and warning that freedom of navigation and overflight in the South China Sea must be respected in accordance with international law. In Washington, Pentagon spokesperson Brigadier General Pat Ryder emphasized that U.S. operations were lawful and intended to maintain open sea lanes. "We will continue to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows," he said, adding that America's defense commitments to the Philippines remain ironclad. Beijing, however, accused the United States of provocation and interference, with its foreign ministry claiming that the U.S. Navy's presence seriously undermines regional peace and stability. Security analysts warn that the stakes are rising quickly. The proximity of Chinese and U.S. naval vessels in contested waters raises the risk of another collision, this time between two global superpowers. If an American warship collides with a Chinese vessel, the crisis could escalate beyond control within hours, warned Dr. Colin Koh, a regional security scholar in Singapore. The South China Sea, one of the world's busiest trade routes, sees an estimated $3.5 trillion worth of goods pass through annually. Any conflict, even a localized one, could have global economic repercussions. For now, the situation remains volatile. Philippine officials have reiterated that they will not abandon Scarborough or Second Thomas Shoal, while China continues to assert its sweeping territorial claims despite international rulings against them. With U.S. warships now in the immediate vicinity, the South China Sea has once again become a dangerous flashpoint with the potential to ignite a broader regional conflict.